In a world with entirely too many shows about cars, this is another pointless automotive podcast.
Hello!
Hello, Rick.
Welcome to another pointless automotive podcast. My name is Frank. What is your name?
Chadwick.
Hi. If this is your first time here, I apologize. If it's not, thank you for coming back against all odds.
And we also apologize.
And we also apologize, but you know that. You know we're good for those kind of things. And we are here today to talk about, and now for something completely different, my past life.
Oh,
Yes!
It's gonna take a dark turn.
It
real
is,
quick.
it is, exactly. In 1842. No. Once upon a time, I was a lowly insurance adjuster. I worked for let's just say a major automobile insurer here in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 12 years. Right when I got out of college, I was like, I need a job.
Oh, a little freaky.
I was like, I know cars. I can hang out with cars all day. And so I ended up getting a job straight out of college, a couple months after I graduated, with an insurance carrier.
Straight out of college.
Yeah, exactly. It's not straight out of low cash. It's straight out of college, and quite an interesting thing. Interesting job. Certainly not necessarily an easy job. I went from working in the office, doing all of the liability decisions and taking recorded statements about what happened in accidents. Ordering police reports, going to the police station and picking them up, doing scene investigations, to then kind of transitioning more out into the field and doing more of the physically writing damage estimates, totaling out cars, reviewing recovered thefts and making evaluations on how legitimate the theft may or may not have been. Same thing with fire. I did some mild fire investigation stuff. I did not accident recreation stuff. That stuff is something that kind of insurance companies don't do. They farm that out to straight up scientists.
Right.
But going through and doing scene investigations after viewing the vehicles and negotiating with body shops and managing body shops and on and on and on. And so, with that said, I kind of wanted to do a Ask an Insurance Adjuster episode.
Yeah.
And so just we're going to throw some stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Because it's kind of one of those things that there's a lot of misconceptions between how all of the things work, right? You'll see a lot of stuff or posts on Reddit about this one weird trick means that the insurance companies can give you a ton of money, or insurance companies are going to rob you blind, or body shops are all evil and they're just there to milk you for insurance money. And a lot of this stuff, there is some truth behind it. There's a lot of bullshit behind it.
Sure.
There's a lot of nuance in it. And so before we go forward, and I asked you to maybe come at me with some generalities, some questions, maybe some scenarios that have or haven't happened. I do want to put a disclaimer out there. Yes, I was an insurance adjuster for over 12 years. Specifically here in California, every state is different. There are incredible differences between how things are done here in California versus how they might be done in Maine, versus how they might be done in Texas, versus how they may be done in Botswana. So everything is specific. And so keep that in mind. So if you're wait a minute, that's bullshit. That's not how it works because this happened to me. And it's it very well might be California specific. And I never did this job outside of California. So I do not know your specific scenario. With that said, again, I did it for 12-something years. So I do know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Frankly, I know too much about it and I'd rather forget it. And maybe this will be cathartic. Maybe this will get some of it out of my brain and leave more room for automotive minutia. I don't know.
A box of tissues in case you start tearing up on me, man.
Yeah, or a box of tissues because I get really excited about the subject. But either way,
Are those happy tissues?
Well,
or
they're
sad
gonna be.
tissues?
It depends. It greatly depends. Why is that sock there? Why is it stiff?
How
about what do you think? Have you dealt with a lot of
Dude,
insurance stuff or know somebody, maybe maybe a gentleman lover or something who was involved in some sort of insurance snafu, and maybe it made sense or maybe it didn't.
He was a man, but he wasn't gentle.
That's true.
So yeah, actually, I'm like so lame about insurance because I'm a pretty good driver. Like totally fortunately. Yeah, you would think, right? Leave it on the track, boys. No, I'm a pretty safe driver. I haven't actually been in a lot of accidents, so I don't have a lot of experience.
Okay.
But I do have some good questions for someone that's not experienced to ask you. It's Frank, the insurance guy, AMA.
That's me today. I'm wearing a different. Yes, exactly.
Ask me anything.
Anything.
So I got some good questions. I think a lot of people, like maybe that are outside that.
I accept bad questions too.
Yeah.
So you know.
Oh, they're horrible questions.
Yeah.
Good, bad, and here's one for you.
Okay.
Track day damage or easily recognizable street racing damage.
Sure.
How does that play out with someone with just regular insurance trying to make a claim?
So I'm going to start off with a story, and this might be a reoccurring theme here. Once upon a time, so there was a chunk of time where my territory, when I was doing damage inspections, was Napa, Sonoma, and then over to like Petaluma and Novato. And if you're not familiar with the Bay Area, it's kind of a big chunk of space.
In some wine country.
It's wine country. It's funny. I went to a training thing in the Midwest, and when I went there, it was all these other people from all over the different country. It was like advanced estimatics was this course, and I already knew all the things, but it was like just like a box to check on my internal resume, right? So I go out there, I'm there for all the things, and people are like, oh yeah, like I work in Central Detroit, and other people, oh yeah, I work in El Paso, and like, oh yeah, I work in, whatever. I work in just Upper Peninsula, Michigan, where it's like snowing and shitty all the time. And I'm like, yeah, my territory is Napa and Sonoma, like literally beautiful as wine country. And everyone's like, you son of a bitch. Like, I had it so easy compared to like some of the prettiest areas in the world. If I want to go take a lunch at like some Michelin star restaurant, I can do it like at 5 different restaurants.
Right.
You know, it's just insanity. So that was my territory. And in the middle of this territory is a racetrack, maybe you've heard of it. Once upon a time it was called Sears Point. Once upon a time it was called Infineon.
Yep.
Currently I believe it's just Sonoma Raceway or Raceway at Sonoma, depending on what sign you read. Very well-known track.
Yes.
So I had an inspection on a then pretty new, I think it was like a 2012, it was like less than a year old, Dodge Ram. Gas V8, so Hemi, 6-speed manual, standard cab, long bed, 2-wheel drive.
Okay.
So got in an accident in the parking lot at the track.
Okay.
First off, you look at the truck, you're like, okay, truck. Yeah, it obviously got in the parking lot. This was not on my own track.
What's the just to like clarify for anyone listening? What's the posted speed limit at Sonoma's parking lot? It's got to be like 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour tops.
Maybe 10. But because considering it's a racetrack, they probably say 5, but let 10 slide. Because if they say 10, then 10 turns into 20. Sure. It's a racetrack, right? So, it's single digits.
Okay.
So I get there, right? It's like, oh, it's there. We're not towing it from the scene because we're not sure about coverage. And they don't want to tow it somewhere to a shop and do all this stuff if they can't pay for it, right?
Fair enough.
Because if there's no coverage, then you just pay for something that you can't pay for because there's no coverage. So hey, go on out there. Let me know if anything looks weird because, well, the lost location is a racetrack. Fair. So, because here's the thing. So policies are written in a way where, most policies I should say, they're written in a way where if you are actually street racing, you're probably going to be covered. Because it's all about organized racing events.
Right.
If it's unorganized, if you roll up to a stoplight, somebody rolls up next to it and they start revving and you start revving back and you both clutch dump it and you go and you get to 60 miles an hour and you do something dumb and you spin that thing into the bushes, you're going to be covered for that.
Well, it's on the street, right?
We used to say we cover stupid.
Yeah.
Like we insure idiocracy. Like that's a thing. What is not insured is quote unquote organized race events. So if you're being timed, there's not going to be coverage for that. If you're on a racetrack, by definition, unless you broke in the middle of the night, it's pretty much an organized quote unquote racing or competition event.
Right.
So we get there, or I get there, I should say, and the front end on this truck is buried I mean, both front frame rails are at a 45-degree angle. I mean, the thing is swung over. You can't open the doors because just the whole structure and everything is buckled. The roof rails are buckled, bags deployed, but it's like a straight up bone stock like fleet service truck.
Weird.
It's like, what the hell? And so I called the guy in the office. I took like a dozen photos, upload them to the computer. I said, hey, pull this claim number 1234. Pull it up. I'm like, bro, this guy didn't just like bump into something in the parking lot. Like this is, homie smoked a K-rail. And the whole front end is like hard scratch scrape.
Yeah. That's why I asked about
scrape.
the parking lot speed limit.
Yeah.
I figured it'd be pertinent in this case.
Homeboy smoked a K-rail.
Yeah.
And so then he doesn't give up the dirt. He says, well, I was using it and I was taking a defensive driving course that was at the racetrack.
Very nice.
And I screwed up. But no, his argument was like, it's not an organized race event because we weren't timed. It was simply a quote unquote, well, and I wasn't involved in the full on investigation. I don't think there was coverage. But ultimately it was like, bro, you smoked a K-rail in your brand new fleet truck at like 60. I mean, the front was gone. Seatbelt pretensioners blown, driver airbag blown, windshield shattered from the airbag. Like, I mean, it was gone. It was obviously total. And it was a brand new, like, $30,000 pickup. It's like, all right. Bro, you can make that argument. I don't know. I ultimately don't know what happened.
Right.
Yes. So, and it's funny that you brought this up because there's much to do about right now. I don't know if have you seen all the hubbub about the homeboy with his new, I don't know, BRZ or 86?
Where they give you the track day pass, right? They encourage you to take
you get I'm sure it's a very extremely entry level like track day experience.
Yes,
but yes,
sure.
You get one of those
with an
the purchase
instructor
of
in the
car.
passenger seat and all that fun stuff.
And so all of that. But did you see the thing where
we are talking about
homeboy cooked his motor? And
we're talking about a GR86, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Or I don't remember if it was that or BRZ, but ultimately
one of them.
Well, you're right because it was Toyota was like we're not gonna. Sorry, you're on your own. Like we saw photos of you online at drift events, so we're not covering your motor.
It's kind of funny.
Kick rocks.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of. It's funny that you mentioned that specifically because literally that article about the GT86 made me think of this exact scenario. Well, hey, insurance wouldn't cover you on a track. You have to have track day insurance.
Yep.
Which is a whole different animal. It's kind of pricey. Rightfully so, probably. And so that whole track day thing with homeboy blowing his motor made me think about it because there'd be scenarios where we go like, now again, this was back in the day, so we'd be like, hey, let me look up homeboy's MySpace page, right? And we would literally see a guy post like, the guy would be like, yeah, I don't know, my car was hit and run, and then we'd go on his MySpace page, and like the day before, it'd be like, bro, I can't believe I like drank 7 beers and hit that wall, like on their status, and like, dude,
the self-incrimination photos.
And I mean, we didn't do a lot of that. The only time we would ever look at anything like that would be if it was clear as day that guy was full of shit.
Yeah.
They're like, well, hey, maybe he's such an idiot that like he posted about this on social media, and it'd have to be clear as day, like photos of him like dragging the car out of the bushes, like hammered drunk or something like that.
Right.
And then claiming the thing was stolen. Stuff like that. But yeah, if you care about your car. Get track day insurance if you're gonna do it, run it on a track. If you're doing your local rallies, I would not consider that insurance hat adjuster hat back on. I would not consider that an organized race event.
Yeah.
So I think you'd be in the clear if you did something dumb and put it off the road. And granted, if it's a canyon road and there's a tow recovery from there, that no one's gonna think twice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tread lightly with that kind of thing because there's a lot of times there's not going to be coverage for that sort of thing. And if it's a valuable vehicle, get that track day insurance or roll the dice. It's up to you. But
nice.
Yeah. Anything else, sir?
Yeah,
that I can help you with.
Another story I used to hear is bright colored cars, especially red cars.
Okay.
Fetched a premium when you go to insure them. I've never noticed this, but I've always owned mostly turd box bright colored cars.
Fair. So best I know, that's complete horseshit.
Yeah.
Now, I am not a studier of the actuarial sciences. I don't work in underwriting, so I never did policy or underwriting or anything like that. And every state, again, California is its own deal. Every state is its own deal. But as far as I know, and I say that because every state they have an insurance commissioner. The insurance commissioner, and there's all these bylaws of what you can and cannot do in that state as far as writing premium and charging premium. If you want to if you're an insurance company here in California and you want to blanket add cost to premiums, like, hey, in this scenario, this is going to cost more, you have to apply to the California Board of Insurance and go in front of the insurance commissioner and say, hey, this is why we're going to charge more for this. And so, red, a rest to be red, yellow, no, those are not, at least here in California, no. Same story with like, similar deals. Like, oh, well, they only put a back seat in those cars because now it's a 2+2, so now insurance premiums are way lower because it has a back seat. And that's why they did that. And there, you'll hear countless stories about weird little kitschets like that. Well, they didn't put a factory spoiler on it because then it would be considered a sports car. There's a lot of like old wives' tales, and maybe that was the case in 1961.
I feel like the bright colored car thing is like a very widely spread rumor, though. I think because I've heard that multiple times from other people, and
and
like I said,
same with like the 2-seat, 4-seat thing, right?
Yeah.
Where well, that's why you would buy like the 300 TX behind it. Well, that's why you buy the 2+2, because the 2+2, the insurance rates are way lower because now it's not it's a 4-seater.
Well, they were in this case because they didn't have two turbos strapped to them, because you can only get the 2-seater only had the turbo option.
But like, think of the opposite of that. It's like, well, now it's considered a sports car, so it's high risk because it's a 2-seater. Well, how about this? If you can have 4 people in the car instead of 2, and you wreck that thing, and it's your fault as a driver, and you're liable for injuries to people, you just doubled the exposure because now you carry 4 people.
Plus the 2+2, those back 2 seats really aren't real seats. Let's be brutally honest.
Or how about this? If you're 17, right? What is more dangerous?
How'd you do that without singing Winger just now?
She's only 17.
Okay, just check it.
So
if you were a robot.
So if she's only 17,
hey now,
and she is driving in a car with a passenger who maybe is like whatever, driving with a passenger going wherever. What is more likely for her or him to do something stupid? Having a single passenger in the car and you guys are driving to school and back, or having the 2 front passengers and two people in the back seats and everyone's cracking jokes and doing stupid shit and egging you to like do something dumb? I think a 2-seater is probably a safer thing than a 4-seater, especially from an insurance perspective as far as potential exposure.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, there's a lot of old wives' tales like that are kind of bullshit. The 4-seat thing is one of them, and again, at least recently, even's like, oh, I bought the sedan versus the 2-door because the sedan is cheaper to insure, like say an E30, right? There might have been a time and a place when that was a thing. I don't think that's really a thing anymore. No. So there's a lot of that. There's far bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
Anything else, sir?
Here's one for you.
Okay.
The craziest claim that was clearly the owner's fault, but they straight up denied it the entire time, that you had to personally go out and check out.
Oh boy. I've got a fun one. It might not be because the amount of, hey, I don't know. All I know is I walked out and my car looked like this. Oh, the amount of those claims, that was like once a month, where it would just be somebody completely full of horseshit. There are some fun ones. Like there was one where, or just like people like blatantly trying to defraud, where they're like clearly like, our car has like literally like a scratch on the front bumper, and their car, the whole rear end is caved in, and they're like, oh, they rear-ended me, and they clearly been going around brake checking people and trying to like claim injury and all this stuff. That stuff was not common, but it certainly happened.
Sure.
I want to say statistically, 1 out of every 10 insurance claims, has some element of fraud in it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whether that is something as simple as somebody trying to rope in like a small dent next to a big dent as part of all the same claim, or somebody trying to skirt some responsibility by saying the car was parked when they actually backed into another parked car and left. There's a lot of different elements of that. Some are more gravely misleading than other ones, which are just a little more innocent. The exception is one state, where it's 1 in every 5. Can you guess this state?
I want to say Florida.
Yes, sir! Florida, strikes again. So, one interesting one was I had, and I kind of alluded to it before when I was the whole MySpace thing. Homeboy has the front of his car caved in. I don't remember. I think it was like an '04 Monte Carlo. Those the front wheel drive, 2-door.
Things are already questionable. Things are already sketchy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or no, I take it back. You know what it was? It was an '01 Impala. So like the fancy, it was like the tarted up like Malibu.
Yeah.
Chevy Malibu front wheel drive.
Things are still sketchy.
Had like the kind of half smoked with the red circle tail lights and the spoiler.
Where you could get the overlays and make it look like an R34 GTR.
That exactly. That came with those. Yeah, it was a silver one of those. Front end was smoked.
Yeah.
Right. And the guy was like, I don't know. I just came out that I don't know what happened, but he reported as a hit and run. Like he came out and he what the fuck? Like yeah, I went to go to work the next day and the front end was just smoked. I'm like, well, that's weird. Like straight on, not like the corner, like full on right on the front.
So he was parked on the side of the road?
He was parked, yeah. He was
so
parked
someone veered into the opposite side of the road?
He doesn't know. He was like, maybe it was a garbage truck because it's hit pretty good. Okay. So, okay, yeah, organize it, tow it to the shop, get to the shop, look at it at the shop. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? And I was in the office side. This is before I was out in the field doing some stuff. So I had my guy out in the field look at it. And he calls me, he's like, well, bro, first off, there's like a half empty 30-pack in the back seat. The cans just around there. Secondly, 0% chance this thing was hit. Like there's all this paint transfer on the front end. It clearly is all messed up. So call the guy. I'm like, hey, like you gotta explain this to me more because this doesn't look at all like what you're telling me. He's like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's just all I know is I came out the next morning and that's what my car looked like.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what were you doing the night before? Oh, I hung out with some friends and then I got home at like 9 o'clock at night because I had to work the next morning. Drove home, no big deal. Got up, this is what my car looked like. Okay. So we're just like, okay, this guy's full of horse shit. We're like, okay, well, let's backburn. I got other claims to work, and you gotta remember, this is a corporate job. Everyone's overworked and underpaid. Right?
Sure, that makes sense.
So, okay, well, this guy's not being honest. His car's sitting at a shop. I'm not going to prove any repairs till we get to the bottom of it. Well, actually, the car was totaled.
Yeah.
So it didn't really matter. We're like, okay, well, there's probably going to be coverage, because even if he did something dumb, like just smash a wall and run, he's got full coverage on the car. We'd find him at fault, but we still pay for shit.
Right.
And there was sometimes we would hold off on just paying for it, because if there's something like an excluded driver listed on the policy saying like, hey, like, little Sally's not allowed to drive it because she just got her license and I don't want to pay triple of my insurance, so she's excluded.
Right.
And so if there's like excluded drivers or there's weird things in the written into the policy like that, we might be like, hey, we need to confirm who was driving this car first because this doesn't make sense. But it wasn't one of those scenarios. So okay, well, let's move forward. We're going to total the car out, but we'll drag our feet a little bit because we got to get more information out of this guy. This guy's clearly full of shit. A couple days go by and and we looked on Homie's. This is what it was. We looked on Homie's. This was MySpace era. Looked on Homie's MySpace page. We didn't find anything necessarily about the accident. He had like one photo of the front end, and it was just like lol, and that's all it was. And we're like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
But then prior to that, we're like, dude had some like straight up like Aryan Nation stuff, and just really like not a great member of society type things that made me go, okay, now I believe this guy less, and that's all circumstantial, and it doesn't necessarily have bearing on the claim, but I don't really like this guy, so I'm not going to bend over backwards to bail this guy out. A couple days go by, and I get a phone call from just some guy, right? Calls in. He's like, yeah, he's like, I called my insurance company because I was hit and run, and they did some digging, and they found there was it turns out there was a police report, and through the police report he was able to get a plate, and then the insurance company ran a plate, and they wouldn't give the information for the guy, but they did what's called a carrier discovery, which is a search that you can do as an insurance company where you can search based on the VIN number or license plate who is an insurance carrier any specific date. So they did a carrier discovery and found out that we were the insurance carrier at the time.
Oh.
And so he called, went through the phone tree and got me. And he was hot. And he should have been.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, so here's the deal. So he spilled the beans. He let me know what really went down. This guy, it was long story short, it was a road rage thing.
Oh.
So this poor guy, he was an older guy. He was like, older. He was like in his mid-50s. And he's driving his, I don't remember what it was. Let's call it a Saab 9000 Aero.
Nice.
Because that's a cool car.
This is very cool.
And it fits, mid-50s guy driving a Saab. So he gets, something happened, somebody cut somebody off, and our driver got just pissed, and he was drunk, him and his buddy. And they tried to run our guy off the road, and our guy's just like fleeing. And in the process of that, he is going really fast, and he stomps on the brake to make a turn. And our guy just blasts him in the rear. Just absolutely rear ends the shit out of him.
Wow.
He then gets out, our guy gets out. The guy that was fleeing stops because he doesn't know what to do because he just got the rear end of a Saab caved in.
Sure.
And then our guy gets out.
5-star safety vehicle though.
It is. It lived, I don't know if it lived, but he lived.
Yeah.
And then our guy got out and was threatening him and punching his window and ripped his mirror off and was yelling at our guy. And our guy then, the Saab guy then, now that our driver was out of the car, just bailed, right?
Wow.
Bailed, went somewhere else, went to a parking lot, went to a gas station, something, called the cops, was freaking out, rightfully so. And our guy, drunk with his buddy, drove home, parked it, right?
LOL.
So then I get to call my guy, right? So first off, then I call and say, okay, thank you for your statement, because I record all that, right? And take it as recorded saying
sure.
what happened. Then I call the guy's insurance company and basically say, hey, this is what I was told. I knew something on our end didn't add up. Thank you for this. I'll keep you posted. We're probably going to accept liability here, especially if there's a police report floating around up there. So let me corroborate this. So I call our guy, right? And I'm like, hey, you got to come into our office in person. We got to talk. And we kind of don't do that unless it's a straight up special investigation type thing. And he's like, oh, I'm busy. I don't know. And I don't have a car now. My car's totaled. I don't know what to do. So I can't get there. How am I going to get there, right? I was like, oh, well, check this out. And so kind of go well, we got a call from this guy, and I understand there's a police report. And then he still doubles down. He denies, that's bullshit. I don't know. Some guy's trying to play you. He's trying to get some money out of you guys. I don't get it. All I know is da 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 da. And then we get a police report. And sure enough, it corroborates everything. Our guy, I don't know if he was arrested, but the police went to the guy's door and cornered him and did all this stuff.
I'm sure, yeah.
And he claimed something. So, we call him back. My manager calls him back because he refused. He's like, hey, we're gonna get dropped and all stuff. And he just eventually goes I did a very bad thing, and he spilled beans. He just and that's the crazy thing. It's you can say oh, now he's gonna get because he thought he was gonna get arrested for insurance fraud and all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Back to the Department of Insurance for the state, they have so much shit on their plate, and insurance companies have so much shit on their plate. Unless you do something insane, like you strut up a straight up fraud ring,
right?
They're not. So we refer to them. They say, we don't have the resources to pursue.
Crazy.
Guy gets off the hook. But it's there's lots of that where people they'll double down.
Oh,
my rule of thumb is I'd always try and give people an out, right?
Sure.
Where I'll go, let's say let's say this is your 300 ZX wreck here, and you're saying, oh, someone hit it in the door here. I've had the car for 8 months, and someone backed into the door, and now there's a dent here. And a little scrape over here too. And maybe some of it looks new, but a lot of it is super rusty and old, and I'll walk up and
sure.
I'll know that they're trying to get free lunch.
Yeah.
But they're not really, they're kind of coy about it. They're like, oh, I did. I'm like, oh, okay, well, where specifically is the damage? It's an older car, so I know maybe there's some nicks and dings. That's old. What's old and what's new? And they just go, oh. And they just they gesture broadly at the side of the car and they say, all of this is new. I'll try and give them an out. I'll go okay, well, this is clearly old because it's super rusty, and this is see how the clear coat's dying back off this key scratch here. That's because moisture and stuff over years has gotten behind it. So that's obviously old. But is this what you're talking about being newer? And it's oh yeah, that stuff's old. They were trying to claim it, but I give them an out and they took me out. I call them out gently, then we're fine. It's interesting because there's all these instances of people doing kind of fraudulent stuff, big or little or whatever. But that's like not even really the most screwed up scenarios, because I know you were asking me about like, hey, some like jacked up scenarios and people trying to.
Yeah.
Like there was some stuff that would be. People would feel like they're not at fault when they're totally at fault, or they're like they get caught up in some nonsense even though they're not at fault. Like for instance, I've had several times where people get a DUI, like our driver gets a DUI, and they're completely not at fault for an accident.
Yeah,
like we had one where our guy's just sitting there, stopped at a red light, and gets just blasted by somebody in the rear, just gets smoked. Cops show up, and our guy was sitting there just minding his own business, but he was also drunk.
Oh, okay.
So 0% at fault for an accident, but then your car's in a tow yard on a 30-day PD hold because it's mandatory with a DUI.
Boy, that's bad luck.
And I mean, it's like you make your own luck, right? Like
sure,
shouldn't be on the road, but or I had another one where our guy was drunk driving down the road, and somebody pulled out in front of him. We T-boned them, and I had to sit down with like the other adjuster with the other insurance company. We're on the phone talking back and forth, and be like, the other adjuster was like, okay, well, your person was drunk, so obviously they're at fault. I'm like, oof. Well, here's the deal. Our guy was drunk and convicted and hauled away from the scene in a squad car.
Right.
So I'm going to eat some responsibility here, like for our driver. Like we're going to eat some of this. But the other person completely just pulled out in front of them and like breached their duty to maintain a right of way and just pulled right out in front and got T-boned. Like, if our person was sober, they would be 0% responsible.
And the same scenario would have happened.
But because, and the same thing would have happened. Now, there is a legitimate argument for like, well, our guy was drunk, so perhaps he would have been able to get on the brakes or made some sort of evasive maneuvers faster than he did or didn't because, well, he was drunk.
Right.
So I think we ended up doing like 50-50 liability where like,
okay.
Like, and at first we're like, well, your guy was drunk, so, why are we having this conversation? I'm like, bro, you don't understand. Let's go through this. Like, I'm gonna eat some liability here, but it might have even we might have even been less. Maybe we just took like 20% or something like that. Because the argument is like, well, maybe the damages would have been way less if our person was able to stomp on the brakes and maybe pull 20 miles an hour off their speed.
A little better reaction time,
which is fair. I think that's a fair point. But there's all these things that you kind of you look at it and you go like, oh, like our guy was drunk, but he wasn't at fault. And sucks to be that guy, but hey, you know what? Don't drive drunk.
So what if both drivers are drunk? Did you kind of wash that equation out, or do you?
I mean,
because that's tricky, right?
I never actually had one where it was like a double DUI. I've had some weird, definitely some claims with some weird stuff, like literal children driving cars through houses and stuff like that.
I was gonna say
destroying like ancient like Ming Dynasty pottery. And stuff like
I was gonna say
crazy.
Double DUI is probably my least favorite double D situation.
That's true. Wasn't there like a guy on Reddit several years ago where he tried to like make up some story about how he had like 2 Johnsons?
Is that right?
And and he was like, then they're like trying to sell a book about his like weird like double Jeopardy exploits. Where he's like, one was doing this while the other one was doing this, and it turns out it was all like a hoax, and the guy was trying to sell a book. Yeah. Which, I mean, there's gotta be at least a couple dudes out there like
packing double.
Yeah.
Double barrel, if you will.
Definitely, yeah.
Is that like an upgrade with 2 Ds for a double dose of this? Pimp?
I don't think it's an upgrade. I think for most people that would be a downgrade.
Okay.
But yeah. So like with the double DUI thing, like,
how does that?
Never
work?
ran into it would just you would kind of almost
wash it, right?
Kind of. Yeah. You'd have to look at it and say, okay, like what was done here was one, like, I don't think you would go like, well, this guy blew a .18 and our guy blew a .12, so therefore, you don't go that into the woods. It's like, okay, duty owed, duty breached.
Yeah.
Right? And
one guy's drinking margaritas, the other guy's drinking Jack and Coke.
So it's interesting, I did have, kind of part and parcel to this is, I had a claim where our guy was driving his truck in a parking lot. Mm-hmm. And so he files a claim, says, hey, I was just stopped in this parking lot and this person I don't know what they were doing, but they just kept driving. They just ran right into the back of me.
Huh.
Right into the back of my Ford F-250
King
Ranch. Not well parked, just stopped in the parking lot, just stopped in the lane in it, waiting for a car to back out. And the car behind our driver just went right into not fast, 10 miles an hour, 5
Sure.
miles an hour, crunch right into the back bumper. Okay. I end up talking with the other driver eventually, and the other driver is like, I had to use a translator. They're Spanish speaker, use a translator, and he's like, no, this guy in this truck, we were both stopped there, another parking spot opened up, he backed up to give that person room to get out so he can have their parking space, and I'm in a smaller car, he's in this big Ford truck, and back right into my hood. And I'm like, well, it's a word versus word scenario, right? Like, well, our guy said that you rear-ended him. He's like, no, that's not what happened. Like, he backed into me, right? Word versus word. And our guy's adamant about it. Like, absolutely not. Like, I don't know what this guy's trying to pull. I did not back into them. They rear-ended me.
Oh, sure. That's a tough one.
So normally, but there was, and this doesn't usually happen because in parking lots, police don't usually come out because it's private property. They don't give a damn. They just tell you to kick rocks. So they wouldn't come out. But they did on this one and filed a police report. So I say, okay, normally, word versus word, usually the police report will come up with like, hey, this person said this person has said that. We don't know. Here's information. Have I say? So I told both parties, the Spanish speaker, they didn't have full coverage on their car. They just had liability. So they're like, my car's like, the headlights are smashed in and the hood's crinkled up. Like, I can't really drive. I got to get to work.
Right.
Can you help? Yeah. And I said, well, it's going to be word versus word. And if it's a word versus word situation, your insurance company's going to take your side and think it's our guy's fault. And we're going to do the same to protect our driver. But we'll wait on a police report, right? Just do our due diligence. Police report gets there. I get the police report. Both our driver and the Spanish speaker at the scene were like, oh yeah, the truck backed in. And so our driver was like, yeah, I didn't see them on the police report. Told the police, like, oh yeah, I didn't see this guy behind me. I put it in reverse, I backed up, and I backed into him.
That's stupid.
Why? Like, this guy knows there's a police report. What's going on? So I call the guy, right? And I'm like, so I got this police report.
Yeah.
You know the police report, yeah. Well, you told the officer that you backed into this other car. And it's on a police report. So I have to accept responsibility here. We're going to pay for this other guy's damages. What's up? Like, I don't want to say, like,
when did he change
what the fuck,
story?
bro?
Yeah.
Is basically what I want to say. Like, why are you trying to pull some bullshit? And then he tells me, he's like, well, those other, the other driver, they didn't have a driver's license and they're here illegally. So they shouldn't have been in the country or been behind the wheel at all to begin with. So I'm not at fault because they shouldn't even have been there.
Oh God.
I'm like, bro, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You realize you're literally committing insurance fraud right now.
Yeah.
Because you told me something false. And he's like, no, well, no, I mean, that guy just shouldn't. I'm not at fault because they didn't have a license, so they shouldn't have been there. And they were in this country illegally. They didn't even speak English. I'm like, God damn it. Yeah. You're aggressively at fault. I wish I could do more to punish you here, but I can't.
Right.
You are at fault. We're paying for the damages. I dislike having conversations with you, sir. Go away. But I mean, and it's like, it's just funny. And I think I said to him, it's like, it doesn't work that way. It's like, well, it should. I'm like, so what? If you see someone parked like on a red curb,
yeah,
you can be like, oh, I'm getting me a new car today, and just T-bone them, and now it's that guy's fault because he was parked where he shouldn't have been.
Right, right.
Or, oh, there's a guy in a handicap space, and there's no handicap placard, so I'm gonna back into him.
Or he can,
and now it's that guy's fault because he shouldn't have been there.
How could he potentially know if that person's like not in this country legally when he's just
when he's
backing up,
absent-mindedly crunching? Yeah, it's so preposterous.
It's like flipping a coin. Like, oh my God, I hope.
Yeah, it's just like, sir, please leave this country. Like, you need to not participate in society. And so there's like a lot of stuff like that where, people make, like hitting an illegally parked car and then they think it's the other guy's fault. Or like that scenario where this person doesn't have a license, so therefore they shouldn't have been there. Well, it's their fault. Or yeah, the DUI guy where you stopped at a red light and you get rear-ended. And it's just like, I kind of feel crappy for you because you were literally sitting there, but bro, don't drink and drive.
Sure.
Like it's,
yeah.
Cry me a river.
I'll be honest with you, man. Parking lots are like a free demolition derby. It's like the wildest things you'll ever think of. Like, everybody throws common sense out the window in parking lots, right? It's like, there's no turn signals, there's random braking, people just be waiting for someone to pull up that's just actually getting something out of their car.
Yes.
And then just the disregard for ever checking your mirrors. These people are throwing their cars right in reverse and just power sliding out of a parking spot. It's wild. There has to be so many claims that come from just parking lot activity.
Yeah, they're super annoying because it's if you're in a let's say somebody makes an unprotected left-hand turn in front of you and you hit them and like, oh, you know, those are annoying because sometimes it can be hard to prove, was it unprotected, was it not, that they cut on a solid green or green arrow, but ultimately a lot of the people are like, oh, hey, nobody got hurt, I'm happy for that, it was an intersection accident, I'm kind of shaken up, I'm going to tell you the truth here, and even if something doesn't go my way as the driver, and I'm found at fault because I thought it was a green arrow but it wasn't, you know, maybe we time out the lights, maybe there's a witness, I don't know. But ultimately, you're like, this sucks, but I'm okay, they're okay, you know, whatever. Parking lot, everyone's pissed off and annoyed at all times about A, they're in a parking lot, B, somebody's in a rush and that's why this happened to begin with.
Sure.
C, everyone's just pissed at each other. So like, they're always low stakes, high annoyance claims for everyone involved, myself included. And it's just like, God damn it, like everyone just take a deep breath. It's not that big a deal. Yes, you've got a dent in the corner of your back bumper, like, frustrating, but okay, like, not that big a deal. But then everyone's hot about it. And it's just like,
well, on the open road, you're not really putting your vehicle in reverse at all.
Correct.
So I think the parking lot puts people in this compromised situation where there's tons of cars to look at around you, so you're kind of looking at other shit, and at the same time, you're having to use these mirrors that you might not have ever lined up. Right? Which, except for makeup.
Well,
what was the makeup mirror?
So what was interesting was with the reversing. So the company I worked for, who shall remain nameless, if we ended up
bad wizard from Harry Potter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Voldemort Insurance.
Any of those? Yeah. Voldemort. Lord Voldemort Insurance Company. The Death Eaters.
I know about Harry Potter lore. Just want to should have been there.
Thank you. Somebody had to do it. So
I think our Twilight comments. Do we do Twilight comments at the beginning of this episode? Is that when we?
I don't remember. I don't remember since I changed my shirt. I kind of forgot a lot about what we just spoke about.
I think a lot comes out on this podcast of horrible movies I haven't watched. I mean, Harry Potter's fine. Harry Potter's good.
Harry Potter's okay. Yeah, Harry Potter.
But the Twilight, I don't regret not watching Twilight.
No. Yeah, there's like vampire impregnation. Good name for a band, by the way. I feel like that's some
gothic porn,
some heavy, sweaty, like Vampire Weekend, like adults only, like tribute band. Oh boy, where are we going? We got lost in vampire impregnation. He who shall not be named. So backing up, so the company I worked for, let's say my driver who I am going over their plane is with my company, but the other driver also has the same company.
Sure.
Right? You know, my company versus my company. It's all in-house, right? When I was working, I don't know if it's changed, but when I was working there, it would go to, like, I would handle my side, and then one of my coworkers, maybe like 2 cubicles down, would handle the other one.
Makes sense.
And so we would have to, because we couldn't send ourselves to arbitration, which is if, like, you know, my company and you know, the general, who I think is wanted for war crimes, the general insurance, let's say.
Would Shaq represent them in a court?
Ooh, good question.
Right?
Maybe they'd be self-represented. I don't know. I just imagine, like, the general from the animated cartoon general from the commercials, like, in the Abu Ghraib, disastrously infuriating, like, war crime type photography. But yeah, Shaq would probably
represent him. What was it? Shaq was in, like, was it a Buick? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was like, look how much room there's in my Buick Viano, and his knees are sticking out either window.
His knee is touching the rearview mirror in one of the photos.
Yeah, with that really terrible, like, Buick ad, like, MIDI song that they play before you tap. God. Hi, I'm Shaq, and look how much room is in my subcompact. Yeah.
Yeah, they cut the door off to get him in.
This was the largest vehicle that I could afford. But yeah, so if it was that scenario where it's like same company within the same company, normally if it's like 2 different companies, we can't come to an agreement, it would go to an arbitration panel, and the arbitration panel would review all the facts and 11 months later kick out a finding. And it was binding, so whatever insurance company lost would have to pay the other one, whatever. But you can't do that against yourself.
Sure.
So me and the other adjuster would have to have a meeting of the minds and say, hey, look, this is a scenario, we have to agree here on shared responsibility, whatever. And we had one where it was a parking aisle with, like, the side, like the diagonal 45-degree parking spaces, and it's a one-way, so you can only drive in one direction.
You think?
Correct. Our person, my driver, was backing out of the parking space.
Gotcha.
My coworker's driver was also backing, but in the aisle, and backing the wrong way down the aisle. Like, hey, there's someone's going to back out over here, so let me back out, say, 6 spaces down to let them out while my person was backing, and they went, bumper cover to bumper cover, right on the corner. Boop, they impacted each other.
Nice.
My driver didn't see him because he was looking behind him, but looking
The correct
way, and the other driver just didn't. I don't know if they were absent-minded, but they didn't see that there was someone backing up when they were backing up, so they collided. And I was like, well, your driver's at fault. Like, they were going the wrong way down a lane in reverse. Like,
100%.
they're at fault. And then the other driver, my coworker, was like, no, like, your person is entering the stream of traffic. Like, my driver saying, hey, Frank, your driver was backing out of a parking space into an aisle. They have to yield right away to whoever's in that aisle. Your driver's at fault. And I'm like, well, they would be at fault if your person was traveling in the aisle in the correct direction.
Yeah, sure.
And if you're backing up, if you're in reverse, you have to yield the right of way to pretty much everyone else.
Yeah.
And then the other adjuster was like, you're correct, they do. Your person was also backing out, my driver. So they need to also still yield, but they're backing out into an aisle of traffic. That's like double, like they're backing and they're entering traffic. I'm like, yes, but your person was backing in the wrong direction down the aisle. And so like we went this back and forth and we just couldn't come to an agreement. I don't remember, I honestly, it went like, we had to like send it to like our managers, like you gotta figure this out.
Oh
this
boy.
is like, it seems very basic. Like, I still think my driver was not at fault because they were, and they were looking, and they were keeping a proper
You gotta
lookout.
check both, right?
Correct.
So
And we might have done a 50. I think at the end of the day, we're like, it's 50-50.
I'd say 50-50.
It's 50-50.
You should be aware, but like also that's like a good question. Like, what's your level of faith in humanity? I
Sure.
check both ways on a one-way street.
Absolutely.
I do, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a few where I live. There's a like right downtown Martinez. There's a few one ways, and yeah, there's always somebody who's going against the grain.
Yep. Never know.
So you just never know. Any other questions for a former insurance professional, my friend?
Boy, that was awesome. I think that that we're up on time and like that.
Yeah.
That is awesome, man. Like it's technically Frank filling a guest spot this week was kind of cool, but it's a really
Right.
insight into an industry we really don't know a lot. Like we all have insurance, we all pay for that service, but we don't know the inner workings. And it's kind of, for me, it's like kind of cool to see these scenarios how they play out because you have to be logical,
Right.
you have to be fair and consistent, right? It can't be like one way on this case and then the exact same mirror case gets a different.
Well, this is going to work against us, so we have to go different than we did last time. Like where it's interesting, and one thing to remember, and this will be kind of the parting thing, is if you are dealing with insurance stuff, I've heard time and time again of people, they're out to get you. The insurance company, they're going to do everything they can to delay or deny or put you in a bad spot, or they're going to total your car and steal it from you and then sell it because they're actually going to make money. And it's just like that kind of is not really the case. I mean, obviously these are for-profit companies, and so
Sure.
they have a vested interest to not just be like making it rain on top of every claim with cash. With that said, you got to think about the people that are involved here, like your local Joe Blow insurance adjuster and their middle management team above them. They are overworked and underpaid. They're not making nearly enough money to truly try and stick it to you,
Right.
in order to make their boss. They want to close the claim, pay it, be done, and go home at the end of the day.
Makes sense.
Especially, it's month end, like we got to get this money off the books, and so just know that more than anything, it's not like these people are like literally foaming at the mouth to try and screw the little guy.
Right.
It's like they want to close out claims and go home.
Yeah, it doesn't make for a rewarding day.
And so, sometimes you'll be on the beneficial side of that, like they'll overpay you to just close the claim and be done. Sometimes you'll be on the short end of that. And if you are, and you have legitimate ways to get, to show evidence that you're getting shortchanged, and you can keep fighting that battle. If any of y'alls out there have any other insurance scenarios or questions or anything you want to put on the table, we can definitely do this again.
Yep.
Down the road. In which, unless all of you guys hate this, in which case you can also comment, this is dumb, please don't talk about insurance shit. Totally reasonable as well. But if you've got any insider questions, I will do my best to gather all those together for another episode later down the line.
For sure.
So ask away.
Yes.
Homies, speaking of asking,
I
think I have to ask you some things, right?
That's right. So let me go over the game.
Yes. And I will
The
cue you
rules. It's our quiz game, everyone.
Oh, boy.
Everybody's favorite, except for me when Frank stumps me. So he's going to find a 80s, 90s, early 2000s print ad that was actually run in some form of printed publication, usually a magazine
Correct.
at the time.
Yeah.
These were really cool, especially from the 80s and 90s. The wording is hilarious. Usually the graphics are pretty fun.
Usually, yeah.
But he's going to read the ad, omitting anything that totally gives it away to me. Even if he totally gives most of it away, I can still fail. But we're going to guess, and hopefully put some text specs in there for us. We're going to try to guess the vehicle. I have 3 guesses. I can ask for hints every time I fail miserably. And we're on, man. Let's start this print ad quiz.
Okay. Chadwick, are you ready?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. So this has, there is text and a couple of photos on the top half, and then the bottom half is simply a driver's side, 3/4 angle image of the vehicle clad in white. And it looks like it's in maybe some indoor industrial warehouse or something, which is interesting. And then at the top it has one really small image of, the steering wheel and the interior.
Okay.
And then there's also one of an artist rendering of 2 cams and 4 valves and a piston.
Okay.
Just showing the technology and stuff.
1 piston, got it.
And then it says, the power and the glory.
Jesus.
Buckle up. You're in for power and glory trip with the blank. Its front wheel drive handles the back roads with top brass authority. Shh. Please stop laughing at my ad copy, sir.
How high were these ad guys?
Its front wheel drive handles the back roads with top brass authority. Command decisive 4-wheel independent suspension makes you wish for a few more curves in America's highways. The electronically fuel-injected engine has a flight plan all its own. And road-hugging aerodynamics give blank a slipstream look that's as smooth as the ride. Blank. All systems go. And then there's 2 other little blurbs.
I hope
remember the little interior image next to that. It says celebrated comfort. Cleared for ground control. 8-way adjustable sports seats available in optional glove soft leather. Cockpit comforts as deep as the power indicated on the analog tack. Redline 6,800 RPM. And then under the little valve train, artist render, it says, glory in the power. Takeoff time. The 2-liter twin-cam 16-valve engine gives you a multi-valve sophistication and a muscular 135 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. Make that 190 horsepower with the all-new blank turbo. Even more power to you. Chadwick, what is this motor vehicle, my friend?
Wow, dude. Okay. There was a lot of American references in this, so I don't know if
The power and the glory, my friend.
Yeah, the power and the glory, and it said American roads, right?
Isn't that what you call your left and right hands? The power and the glory?
I was going to say testicles.
Well, the one is usually in the other, actually.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, one
per hand.
Mm-hmm.
While doing a full arm.
Yeah, full bat wing.
Full bat wing. I like to call that the glider.
Yes, the sugar glider. Carry on, sir.
Sugar.
Do you have any? Are you working your way through this?
Obviously, we got a dual overhead cam setup, twin cam, however you want to word it.
Yeah.
2-liter, 16-valve, 135, and then there's a turbo variant making 190.
Yes.
Pretty cool. 6,800 RPM.
That is the red line. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of detail before that. 4-wheel independent suspension's pretty good there.
Top brass authority.
Front wheel drive.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think
fuel injection.
Yeah, this kind of makes me think so many American things though. So I'm kind of
America.
I'm kind of stuck. Like, what was a 2-liter turbo? It's tough, man. Like, I want to think. I always want to think Saab, but I don't think that's the case here. But could be they like front wheel drive. Well, if it's the naturally aspirated, it's going to be the Saab 900 plain Jane. 190 horsepower. We'll be getting you the Saab 900 turbo.
Okay. Excellent guess. It is not the Saab 900 turbo.
My question was going to be, is it domestic? Because of all the American references.
Well, in that case. But it is not from a domestic manufacturer.
Okay.
So it would have left.
So all the American references were just targeted at American audiences?
Perhaps.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So interesting. So my heart is trying to say first gen DSM though. That's where my heart's going. With the front wheel drive. But then you could get me with Plymouth Laser. You could get me with... and I know how your mind works.
Sure.
And you would totally call me wrong, even though those DSM cars are all the damn same. Let's do this, because I'm going to have clarification. I'm going to go with the first gen DSM, but I'm going to say, let's specific... God, I know you pick Laser out of those three. I know you, Frank. It could be... The Eclipse is the most common, then obviously there's the Talon.
Eagle Talon.
Yeah. Yep. Boy.
Quit humping the laser.
Let's say I think it was the GS too, so if there's the turbo. Yeah, I think the first 2 years might have been only front wheel drive. I don't think the GSX came to like 91 or 2.
Okay.
Could be wrong on that.
Good guess.
Okay.
It is incorrect. It is not a DSM product.
Gotcha. Okay, so rules those out.
I'm going to give you a hint. I don't know if you have a question, but I'm going to give you a hint because you're barking up
Getting
the right tree. If you opted for the 190 horsepower turbo version, you had 4-wheel drive, and consarn it, there was no other way that you can get it. That is the crux.
And it was sold here
with
in the
a
States.
2-liter.
Clearly, yeah, that 2-liter makes it tricky.
With a 2-liter. If I told you that there were homologation implications, would that help?
I'm kind of feeling that. I don't know.
And the version we got here, the all-wheel drive aspect of it, and this the hot turbo all-wheel drive version had a different name than it had rest of the world.
I wanted to say this, but I didn't know. It was the 2-liter, wasn't it? Was it the 3S GT? Did they stick that engine in there?
I don't know.
Okay, I was unsure about that, but now I want to say at 190, it's a little more power than the ST165 had, so it's going to be a Toyota Celica ST185. So it'd be the Celica All-Track in the US. The rest of the world, I think they called it a GT4.
Correct. And about as close as you can get.
It's the 165?
It's the 165.
Damn it!
It's the ST190? 190.
I thought it was a little less.
No, it was 190, and then it was 200 when you got to the 185.
Gotcha.
There she is.
Woo.
Although that is the NA version because you got the big fog lights on the
correct
on the all-track.
Damn it!
The power and the glory.
They made 190. I thought it was like 178 or something.
No, it was 190. And then, but they weren't super. They were so much heavier than the NA ones. They were only a little bit faster.
Right, because the turbo and the all-wheel
drive system. They were pretty optioned out. But very cool car. I've come close to buying one of those several times, and I'd like to do it again someday.
The ST185 kind of looks cooler because it's more rounded. It has the hood scoop.
Sure. Yeah, I think
kind of makes it look awesome.
I think it's the better car.
Yeah.
But I have a soft spot for the 165.
They all have the 3S GTE though, right?
Correct. Should we discuss what we've been up to? Do some PCP?
Want to do some PCP, man?
I will do some PCP, and I'm gonna go.
Let's kick back.
It's just so we don't go all day. I'm gonna fire off from the hip real quick.
Go for it.
I bought a car. I'm an idiot.
This guy.
And I make.
We've traded. There's like a juxtaposition in roles here. You're buying cars and I'm selling cars.
I know, and I actively need to be selling cars, which is what you are doing,
sir. Yeah, quite well.
I bought a dollar store Porsche.
Oh, that always works out.
Yeah. So I bought a, and it's funny because we just talked about it in the last episode about like, hey, like have a cheap garage and $10,000. What's your fun car like to fit in with a daily? I bought a '98 Boxster, so a '98.6.
Early
Arctic
96,
silver over Boxster red interior, which
Love those
is
combos.
the one you want. That was the popular color combo. 127,000 miles.
Right in our zone.
Absolutely is imperfect, but running, driving, smogged, $3,500, which is a great price. However, there are things that need to be done. Air oil separator is probably gone south. You get a pretty decent smoke on startup after it's been sitting a couple of days. Check engine light is on. It has some secondary air issues, which is somewhat common on this car. So I got to dig into it, figure it out. Which on a Boxster is not. You don't just pop the hood and start tinkering. There's a little access is fun on this car.
Yeah.
So there's that. The brakes are subpar. The tires are from 2007, so they are comically dangerously old and need to be swapped out.
Yeah.
There's some dents and some dings. There's a crease on one of the rockers. So it's probably a fair market price. It's a good price, but it's not. I didn't steal it.
Yeah. It's a really good deal.
It's a really good deal. It's a really good deal, but it's not like I stole it. The car was sitting for a little bit, so only one of the speakers for the stereo works. The interior smells super musty, like it's been sitting for a while. You can smell it burning off a little bit of oil.
Yep.
So there's probably some seeping gaskets to be tended to and fluids that need to be gone through. The air conditioning doesn't blow cold. There's some imperfections in the top. It's watertight, but probably not for a whole lot longer.
Yeah.
The plastic rear windows is about 50% opaque. It's not like I bought a $10,000 really, really nice 986 for $3,500. I bought a $4,000 986 for $3,500.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good deal.
Sure. I think it's a little more than that.
I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet. I have options. What are my options? What do you think my options are?
So the Mind of
Because
Frank.
you've seen the car. I drove it for you to see.
Yeah,
looking that up today. What are your thoughts on this?
Let's go Mind of Frank on this. First option is some kind of off-road safari build.
Get out of my brain, sir.
Yep.
You are renting a room in my skull.
He wants to do that, which is going to put his maintenance costs through the roof to make it a reliable off-road
everything costs
rally.
through the roof.
Yeah, sure. Track day beater, same deal. You're going to have to take care of everything more than
Every
you want.
fluid, pads, rotors, tires.
And then you find out what's
probably the suspension feels like it
Yeah.
has pretty original components to it.
100% does.
So there's nothing knocking around loose per se, but there is some wear and unaddressed maintenance in the suspension for sure.
Some aged character.
So that's an option. Yeah.
Third option would be restoring it and trying to let it go for a little bit of a profit, return it to the Porsche community as a well-maintained and decently low mileage. I love 120,000.
Yeah,
I think that's a great mileage range.
And that is good. And it's funny, like for Porsche stuff, you hear both sides of the coin, right? You hear people go, "Oh man, these things are great. You just address some of the common issues. Your PCV and your this and your that, and keep on oil changes, and you're great. Like you can go deep into the 200,000 miles. Just do some of the stuff. It's not that big a deal." And then the other side of the coin is like, it has over 100,000 miles. It's worth nothing now. Or it's just like,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's somewhere in between. I'm a fan of high mile cars. So that's me.
Especially these Porsches with the IMS issues and everything. It's like, or bore scoring. It's not going to be an issue.
You know what I need to do first and foremost? I need to make the super clickbaity. I bought the cheapest Porsche in America.
I'm so sick
videos.
of these ads.
And that's what I need to do and go full like tongue hanging out, like revolver against my temple, screaming at like the camera. Yellow outline around my floating head.
And like IMS question mark.
Yeah.
Bore score question.
That or like have you ever seen the DJ Khaled struggling from success?
Oh god.
Or suffering from success album cover where he's just like head in his hands and he's like, oh no, but he's got like a fistful of jewelry and he's basically do that as like a thumbnail. I should do that. I should go full idiot YouTuber and just make one of those.
The thing is with those videos, it's like the cheapest I bought, and then someone literally in the comments is like, "I just bought one for $1,000
less." Out of a Tokyo. Yeah.
You
were stupid. Yeah. So I'm okay. I'll take those things and arrows. But yeah, no, it's fun. So we'll see. We'll boil it down.
I think it's well bought. Dude.
Stay tuned for more updates. And who knows? We'll probably tune in next week and I'm like, I just sold it for $5,000.
Yeah, who knows?
And just some beer money. Who knows? Because that's option 4, I suppose.
Option 4, yeah, just let her go.
How about you? What are your options? What have you been working on?
Yeah, so I've been doing a little American PCP, which has got it's got a different edge to it, I think.
Yeah, it's a little. There's more. It's cut with more meth, I think.
Yeah, it's more gruff.
Yeah,
Less stepped on, but more.
but not gruff like the crime dog.
I mean, there's some gruff in there. He talked. He saw too much.
He's seen some shit. That crime
seen
dog
some shit.
That is, boy, yeah. I'm not Mr. Thin Blue Line, but for that dog, I know that guy's seen some
shit.
Is it like a canine only version for the Thin Blue Line thing? Is it like a dog bone with like a blue line through it? For like if you're like
Isn't it McGruff?
if you're like F the police guy, but you're also like pro PETA and you're like really like want to take care of the police dogs.
Yeah.
Is there like some intersection there where
Well, it's McGruff, right? So it's kind of like an Irish name.
That's
right?
true.
It's not gruff.
That's true. Yeah, it's raging alcoholic, that dog. Carry
Yes.
on. Hey, I'm like 70-something%.
I'm like
Irish,
25%, and I found it overtly racist.
Oh, so if you and me have some sort of a all-man human baby, we can make 100%.
I don't think that's how math works.
I think that is math.
We'll go with that.
Well, it's not how several things work, but that's fine. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Back to
your punch bowl.
Yeah,
Carry
back
on.
to talking about drugs and crime dogs.
Yes.
So the Mustang GT injectors are back from Fuel Injector Clinic. I gotta plug those guys. They're freaking amazing.
What do they charge per? Because
it depends. It totally depends. They will do a cleaning and a flow test, and it's all different prices.
Sure.
But they won't charge you for anything until they inspect your thing, which is awesome because
Oh,
most garages.
Did they ask you to cough?
Right, yeah, most shops will be like, just pay us the cleaning fee, and they don't even
Right.
tell you what happens.
Yep.
But the best thing is their detailed information. You get a personal call from them, which is cool. It's a pretty cool service. I've been using it for way back in my DSM days.
What's the name again? Let's plug them.
Fuel Injector Clinic.
Fuel Injector Clinic.
Yeah, I'll put a little logo on the screen right now. So they came back. Two of the injectors were out of spec. One was grossly out of spec. And the reason I did this is because we're having fueling issues with the Mustang GT. And you don't ever want to try to like do tuning or adjusting your timing if you have injectors that are messed up.
Are they the proper injectors to begin with?
Correct. They're the original GT injectors, the 15-pounders.
And is that a problem with all the Cobra nonsense?
Nope. The Cobra stuff works well. With California smog, you have to kind of keep the injectors in stock MAF. Everyone else in the country just simply upgrades the MAF because this has a large throttle body too.
Right.
And then puts the 21-pound injectors from the Cobra.
Okay.
And they can get that extra power. But
what are the stock ones? Like
15.
15, yeah.
Yeah. So or 17, something like that. No, too many numbers.
17 freedom units.
Yeah, exactly. So they came back with those two corrected. So everything's like. You got to basically they all have to operate within a certain spec, and they're all there now.
Cool.
So when we put it back together, we know our fueling's going to be good. Obviously, I gotta check.
What do they charge per injector?
I can't remember. I think it was like
$20 a pop.
I don't want to quote that on. It's got to be 20 or less.
Okay.
For a full, and you get a
Reasonable.
diagram back with the flow matching and everything. I think it's. I mean, trust me, I've seen like do-it-yourselfers mess these things up, right?
Yeah.
So your injectors.
I've been turpentine for 6 months.
Right.
And you're like, I'll just pay $20.
The plastic's melting, and they put new screens and new rings, so they recondition the injector too.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Great service. I highly plug them. If you guys are having injector issues or you got some used injectors, especially when injectors sit outside of a car in a box,
And never share injectors.
Yeah, no.
Never share injectors.
Yeah. And throw them in the correct
Are we still? Yeah, the sharp spin.
Yeah.
Are we still talking about?
Yeah, I think we are.
Drugs? Okay.
But don't trust if you guys have injectors sitting on.
Yes.
If you got used ones or whatever, send them off. Make sure they're good.
Right.
Before you chase fuel issues, right?
Yeah, that's why I was asking because that perpetual 633 CSI that I'm helping do some fueling working on. Yeah, okay. That might be something I look into.
And that's a 6-cylinder, so
it is.
Yeah, that'll be a little cheaper than the 8. But yes, check it out. But anyway, I did get a comment on my first video saying the distributor could be a little off. So someone could have clocked that off. I do
off a tooth.
Yeah.
And they try and torque it in one direction or the other.
Right.
Max out the adjustments.
Once you start playing with that, you gotta have a timing light. You gotta really take the timing and find out what the ignition time is.
Easy to do when there's no head on it.
Yeah, completely easy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually do that.
Spray some carb cleaner on it with an Amon flame and just kick the motor over.
Yeah, because it's not my car, so F it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do that next, and once we get it all back together. But I think just getting the injectors fixed, everything, we're moving in the right direction. Fuel filter coming up. The pump was a little low on pressure, which is another point. So we'll get there next time.
Cool.
We're getting there though. This thing's gonna get sussed out pretty quick. So that's my PCP, baby.
All right.
I think that's it. Put it in the bag, baby.
You know what? I'm gonna go on a limb. Is this our longest episode ever?
Is it?
I think it's gonna be.
Oh my god.
Thanks for listening to the whole mess. And before we completely step on our collective Johnsons, we are at APA Podcast on the Instagram. I am at The Photographer's Garage. Chadwick, where are you?
Auto Obsessive Garage.
That's it. Tune in
Instagram,
again.
YouTube, yep.
Thanks for doing all the things. We'll see you next time.
Take care, guys.